so redonkulous. I mean, the whole hope springs eternal, the Fed's going to pivot. The Fed's going to pivot. My stonks are going up. Yeah, baby. This is so dumb. I mean, this is dumb. Why should the Fed cut interest rates? Why? Right? What is the rationale for cutting interest rates? The reason you cut interest rates is because an economy is slowing at a rapid pace and you need to stimulate the economy. All right? No one's talking about that. Everybody's talking about the no landing and everything's great and we're reaccelerating. And
Goldman Sachs strategists, in a report, expressed their belief that the Federal Reserve is unlikely to increase interest rates during its upcoming meeting from October 31st to November 1st. They also predicted that the U.S. Central Bank would raise its economic growth projections when policymakers convene next week in November. The strategists reason that factors such as further labor market rebalancing, positive news on inflation, and the potential growth in the fourth quarter would persuade more participants within the Federal Open Market Committee to consider a final rate hike for the year. They have confidence that this will indeed occur. However, Goldman Sachs strategists noted that they anticipate the Fed's dot plot, which reveals policymakers' interest rate projections and will be updated on Wednesday, to reflect a narrow majority of 10 out of 19 members still projecting one more rate hike. They suggested that this projection is mainly to maintain flexibility. As the market attempts to decipher the Fed's monetary policy direction, some significant investors, including J.P. Morgan Asset Management and Janus Henderson Investors, have indicated that the central bank is likely finished with its rate hikes. This comes after an exceptionally aggressive period of monetary policy tightening, marking one of the most extensive cycles in decades. Mark Yusko also shared his perspective on interest rates and inflation, discussing their impact on the average population and the broader macroeconomic implications of persistent inflation.
Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to drop your comment and observations in the comment section below. Thanks and enjoy the video.
When Krugman says something, the opposite is going to happen. But he's like, oh, we've had, epic prints of economic activity. On what planet are you talking about? No, we're not in depth of recession or depression, which, year and a half ago, there would have been many people, including myself even, that would have thought that was a potentiality. So, but we are not in this big expansion. I mean, yeah, the GDP came out positive instead of negative, but then we revised it down and probably gets revised down again. But it's not bad, right? It's right at stall speed. If we're going to run at 2%, again, that's not bad, but it's not great. That's to claim that we have some. I can't remember the exact word he used, but it was literally hyperbolic. Like, this is the best economic data we've ever seen. I'm like, not even close. The difference between inflation and core inflation. Inflation excluding food and energy. And I used to make this joke, like, as long as you don't put gas in your car, heat or cool your house, send your kids to college, go to the grocery store, or, use medical care, you're right, there's no inflation. But if you happen to do any of those other things, which is life, there's inflation, but it's not inflation. You and I have talked about this. It's currency devaluation. And that's why I think there's so much of this, three-card Monty and, hide the whatever. It's because people don't want you to pay attention to the reality. What Voorhees was talking about, what Robert Breedlove was talking about, actually Ayn Rand was talking about, decades ago, is when men, and it is men, a small number of men, control the issuance of the currency, they will destroy it. And that's exactly what's happening right before our eyes. And we are on the precipice, actually, I believe, we actually are on the precipice of losing control. Like Zimbabwe, Venezuela, Argentina is going through this, a pre-election cycle, and there's this, radical guy, and he's, he had a pretty good shot to win, which would actually be a really good thing. But there's a funny post. Someone said, I think it was Bianco. Actually, but it was Bianco. I love Jimmy. And He said, this is an economic announcement. Argentina holds key rate at 118%. 118%? Think about that. We're whining because rates have gone back to 5.5%, 6%. 118%? That is a broken economy. And again, from bad leadership and corruption. And it's from, now they actually had a woman because Christina was involved, but bad people doing bad stuff. And if you are an average person in Argentina and you didn't convert your pesos into Bitcoin, you're screwed. I mean, and Wences, I wish I could remember where he did the original speech, but Wences Casares does this amazing speech about his aha moment with Bitcoin because he watched his family lose everything 3 times. Not once, not twice, 3 times, where inflation spiked to quad digits and the government basically, people at the top get super rich and everybody else gets wiped out. It's what happened in Venezuela. It's what's happened in, Turkey. Erdogan's living in a palace and the people are having to pay really expensive prices for stuff to live. And so this is a really big deal. It's a really big deal. And I think your point of, we're going to just change the metrics and get everyone to believe that this thing that we told them it's good for them, inflation. Remember, they told us inflation's good for us. Again, on what planet is a policy that steals half your purchasing power over 30 years good for me? Just generally speaking, if you're going to take half my purchasing power away over time, why is that good for me? That's not good for me. What's good for me is giving me something that appreciates rather than depreciates, that increases in value as opposed to devalues. That would be good for me.
Some staunch Republicans are pushing for offsets to cover the expenses of disaster relief and aid to Ukraine within any continuing resolution. They also advocate for stricter immigration and border security measures, insisting that without these cost-saving measures, they won't support the CR. Representative Ralph Norman, a member of the Freedom Caucus, expressed this sentiment during an interview, stating, "I speak for myself and many others when I say we'll vote against it. I'd even prefer a government shutdown." Mark Yusko weighed in, asserting that the government shouldn't continue to allocate billions of dollars to Ukraine aid when more immediate economic concerns demand attention. He emphasized certain key inflationary indicators and explained why navigating these financial challenges has become increasingly difficult for the average person. Now, let's return to the video.
We give half of what we earn to a centralized authority to do with it whatever they want with no accountability whatsoever. And then if they overspend, they just print more. If you and I overspend, we go to jail, right? You don't pay your bills, you get evicted from your house, you get arrested as a criminal. It's not quite that extreme, but there used to be a debtor's prison. Every transaction has the threat of being denied. Every single one. Now, and this is a really good point that Eric made, that most of the time permission is granted, but it might not be. If you were in Cyprus, I talk this with bank, right? Put your money in the bank. It's not your money. It's their money. It's not yours. You have an IOU, and that IOU is good 99.99% of the time. But if you happen to be in Cyprus in 2012 and you woke up and went to the bank, you got 25 cents on the dollar. No explanation. No, I'm sorry. No recourse, right? You can't argue. That IOU was canceled. And the same thing with our money, right? Is 246 years to print 10 trillion. And then 2, we print 10 trillion, 244 years. And then in 2, we print 10 trillion, which means that
not great.
The price of things that we need, and this is the insidious part, right? If you're at the top, you don't care because you can afford it. if you're in the middle and the bottom, you care a lot because you got to pay your rent and you got to pay for food and you got to pay your taxes. Well, now, okay, I can trim going to Applebee's and then I won't be able to sing the song Fancy, which it's kind of catchy. Then you can trim going to the movies and AMC stock can collapse. And you can trim taking that exotic vacation and then the airline stocks go down. But at the end, you can't really trim all your food. The consumer's so strong, so resilient.
Yeah.
That's what the headlines are going to say. And
Yeah.
the fact that no one pulls up this chart and says, wait a minute, you're telling me that retail sales beat expectations. Now, this one actually says because Americans are paying more for gasoline, but the other headlines don't talk about that. They're just like, hey, the consumer is strong. Paying more for gasoline because of dumb policy decisions and the whims of Saudi is not a strong consumer. It's just not. And the fact that I have to, keyword have to spend more to get places, like if you drive to work, okay, you have to buy gasoline. You don't have a choice. And it's so frustrating that that's going to be spun as a positive. There's nothing positive about that. Just not.
The U.S. House of Representatives recently reconvened, setting the stage for a political showdown over budget cuts and the potential for impeachment. This confrontational atmosphere could paralyze the Republican-controlled chamber as the clock ticks toward a looming government shutdown. With just around 12 days left in legislative sessions before funding expires on September 30th, there's limited time to reach a consensus on the 12 appropriations bills necessary for approval in both the House and the Democratic-controlled Senate. One key source of contention among House Republicans is the demand from roughly 3 dozen members of the conservative House Freedom Caucus to reduce spending for fiscal year 2024 to $1.47 trillion, a figure significantly lower than the $1.59 trillion agreement struck between President Biden and Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in May. However, the White House and Senate leadership, including top Republican Mitch McConnell, have rejected this demand. Additionally, other hardline demands within the caucus, such as opposition to Ukraine aid and calls for an impeachment inquiry against President Biden, could further complicate efforts to pass a short-term continuing resolution to keep federal agencies operational. As this political drama unfolds, it's worth noting that the stakes are high for House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who could face challenges to his 8-month-old speakership if he seeks Democratic support to avert a government shutdown or if he fails to act on an impeachment inquiry sought by allies of former President Donald Trump. This situation occurs against the backdrop of recent brinkmanship over the debt ceiling, which has already prompted credit rating agency Fitch to downgrade U.S. debt from AAA to A+, partly due to the repeated last-minute negotiations that threaten the government's ability to meet its financial obligations. In this context, Mark Yusko's perspective on government spending and the allocation of aid to Ukraine raises important questions about the broader fiscal and political implications of these decisions. For more Daily Dose Crypto news, check out these 2 awesome videos on your screen. Click now and we will see you on the next video.